Have you ever felt neglected or unimportant as a child? Wondered if your feelings and needs matter? These questions might resonate with you if you've experienced narcissistic parenting, a complex and often misunderstood dynamic that can leave deep-seated impacts on a child's development and self-esteem. This style of parenting is characterized by a significant focus on the parent's needs and validation, often at the expense of the child. The child, in turn, may struggle with feelings of inadequacy, identity issues, and a constant need for external validation. But that's not all. Perfectionism, difficulty establishing boundaries, fear of abandonment, and even manipulation skills can be the byproducts of growing up under the shadow of a narcissistic parent. The emotional neglect experienced can also lead to difficulties in forming healthy relationships later in life, perpetuating a cycle of unhealthy behavior. Stay with us as we unravel the complexities of narcissistic parenting. Now, what exactly does narcissistic parenting mean? It's a term often thrown around, but it's vital to understand its true essence. At its core, narcissistic parenting is characterized by a parent's intense focus on their own needs, desires, and emotions, often at the expense of their child's. This self-centeredness results in a lack of empathy and understanding for the child's feelings, experiences, and needs. Imagine a parent whose main concern is not the happiness or well-being of their child, but rather their own image, their own gratification, their own ego. This parent views their child not as a separate individual with unique needs and desires, but as an extension of themselves, a tool to meet their own needs. They might use their child to gain admiration from others, to assert their superiority, or to fulfill their own unmet needs and desires. This doesn't mean that the narcissistic parent doesn't love their child. It's just that their love is often conditional, based on how well the child meets their expectations or needs. It's a love that demands rather than gives, that controls rather than nurtures. And what about empathy, that fundamental ability to understand and share the feelings of another? A narcissistic parent often struggles with this. Their perspective is typically self-oriented, making it difficult for them to truly understand their child's emotions and needs. The child's feelings might be dismissed or ignored, their needs overshadowed by the parent's. This lack of empathy can leave the child feeling emotionally neglected and unimportant. It's also important to understand that narcissistic parenting is not always overt. It can be subtle, hidden behind a facade of care and concern. But beneath this guise, the focus remains on the parent's needs, not the child's. As one can imagine, growing up with such a parent can be quite challenging. The impact of narcissistic parenting can be long-lasting, affecting the child's self-esteem, sense of self, and ability to form healthy relationships. But by understanding narcissistic parenting, we can begin to unravel its effects and embark on a journey towards healing and growth. Children of narcissistic parents often struggle with self-esteem issues and forming their identity. This statement isn't just about the occasional self-doubt or identity crisis that everyone experiences. It's about a deep-seated feeling of not being good enough, a feeling that's been ingrained since childhood. When a child's worth is measured solely by the validation of their narcissistic parent, their self-esteem becomes tied to that parent's fluctuating moods and whims. The child learns to view themselves through the parent's eyes, which can lead to a distorted self-image. They may feel like they're always falling short, like they're never quite enough. This isn't just a fleeting feeling, it's a constant, nagging thought that can erode their self-esteem over time. Alongside self-esteem issues, these children often grapple with forming their identity. You see, the narcissistic parent's needs take precedence, leaving little room for the child to explore their own interests, desires, and values. Their identity becomes a reflection of what the parent wants them to be, rather than who they truly are. This can result in an identity crisis. The child may struggle to understand who they are outside of their parents' expectations. They may constantly seek external validation to fill the void left by the lack of acknowledgement from their parent, leading to a shaky sense of self that can persist even into adulthood. These struggles can extend well into adulthood. And so, the scars of narcissistic parenting can last a lifetime, affecting the way these individuals view themselves and their place in the world. Seeking approval from a narcissistic parent can lead to perfectionism and boundary issues. This pursuit for validation often morphs into an unhealthy drive for perfection. Children in these circumstances may become overachievers, pushing themselves to the limit, not for personal fulfillment, but to gain the elusive admiration of the narcissistic parent. They might excel in academics, sports, or other areas, always striving, always reaching for that next level of achievement. But it's not just about achievement. Many children of narcissistic parents become consummate people pleasers, always going out of their way to make others happy, often at their own expense. They are conditioned to put the needs and wants of others before their own, a habit that can be incredibly hard to break. Now, let's talk about boundaries. Healthy boundaries are crucial for maintaining balanced relationships and fostering self-respect. However, children of narcissistic parents often struggle with setting and maintaining these boundaries. They may find it difficult to assert their needs and rights in relationships, as they have been conditioned to prioritize the needs of their narcissistic parent. This lack of boundaries can lead to relationships where they feel undervalued and overused, perpetuating the cycle of neglect and emotional abuse they experienced in their childhood. It's a tough cycle to break, but with awareness and support, it's absolutely possible. These patterns can carry over into their adult relationships. It's important to recognize these patterns, understand their origins, and take steps towards healing. Inconsistent emotional support can result in fear of abandonment and the development of manipulation skills. Let's delve into this. Imagine being a child, and the emotional support you receive is sporadic. One day it's there, and the next, it's not. This inconsistency can lead to a deep-seated fear of abandonment. The child may start to wonder, will my parent be there for me tomorrow? This fear can manifest as anxiety and insecurities, especially in their relationships. They might constantly worry about being left alone, forgotten, or replaced. Now let's talk about manipulation skills. When a child feels they cannot rely on their parents' emotional support, they might resort to other tactics to secure that support. This is where manipulation comes in. The child might use guilt, flattery, or other manipulative tactics to ensure the parent's attention and affection. It's not that they want to be manipulative, but they might feel they have no other choice. It becomes a survival strategy, a way to navigate the unpredictable terrain of their parents' narcissism. It's important to understand that these behaviors and fears aren't the child's fault. They are responses to an environment that is inconsistent and often emotionally volatile. The child is doing the best they can with the tools they've been given. Unfortunately, these issues can persist and affect their future relationships. The cycle of narcissism can be a heartbreaking consequence of emotional neglect. This is a reality many children with narcissistic parents face. Growing up, they may find themselves feeling emotionally unfulfilled, a result of their parents' preoccupation with their own needs and desires. This lack of emotional support can leave profound marks, affecting the child's ability to form healthy relationships and a strong sense of self. Often, the child's emotional needs are overlooked, left unattended, and sometimes completely ignored. This unintentional yet damaging neglect can lead the child to feel insignificant, invisible, and unimportant. Over time, this emotional void creates a desperate longing for validation, attention, and affection. As these children mature, they may find themselves repeating the patterns they've learned from their narcissistic parent, perpetuating a cycle of unhealthy behavior. Some may become narcissistic themselves, adopting the same self-focused mindset and lack of empathy they experienced in their upbringing. Others may find themselves attracting narcissistic partners, subconsciously drawn to the familiar dynamics they grew up with. This cycle of narcissism is a painful echo of the emotional neglect experienced in their formative years. However, it's important to remember that this cycle is not an inevitable fate, but a learned behavior that can be unlearned. Breaking this cycle can be a difficult but necessary step towards healing. Recognizing the patterns and seeking professional help can pave the way towards breaking free from the cycle of narcissism, allowing for the development of healthier relationships and a stronger sense of self. Awareness and support can be crucial in mitigating the effects of narcissistic parenting. As we've seen, the impacts of narcissistic parenting are far-reaching. From low self-esteem to identity issues, from an unhealthy pursuit of perfectionism to the struggle of establishing boundaries, the effects can be profound. Fear of abandonment, development of manipulative skills, emotional neglect, and the potential continuation of the cycle of narcissism are all potential consequences of such an upbringing. But understanding these impacts is the first step to healing. Recognizing the signs, acknowledging the experiences, and validating the feelings can pave the way to recovery. Seeking professional help, like therapy or counseling, can be enormously beneficial. It's about learning to establish healthy boundaries, developing self-worth independent of external validation, and building meaningful, reciprocal relationships. Remember, it's never too late to heal and grow from past experiences. We all have the capacity to overcome adversity and thrive, even when the odds seem stacked against us.